Fantasy freaks and geeks, what's going on? Jamycal here with you. You're listening to me on a Friday. You know what time it is. It is time now to talk about sleepers. Okay. I've got so many. I actually can't squeeze them all into this episode. So for tomorrow's episode, we're going to get to wide receivers. But today, running backs and tight ends. And man, I'm excited because I've cooked up some good ones this week. I really have, man. We're going to start the running back position. We're going to talk about Nick Chubb here, taking on New Orleans. The Saints have allowed the fourth most fantasy points per game to the position group and the 5.17 yards per carry allowed. That is dead last in the NFL. It's a great matchup here for Nick Chubb. Look, I get it. You know, you're saying to yourself, is Nick Chubb really a sleeper? I mean, over the last couple of weeks, man, he has not done much. I know there's going to be some hand-wringing as to whether or not we should play Nick Chubb. And my answer to that would be, yeah, we want to play him. You know, I know that he started out, he scored a touchdown, but got you 10.2 fantasy points, then 5.2, and then 4.5 PPR points in back-to-back weeks in his two most recent games. So he hasn't had a huge return. That being said, he's coming off the bye. He should be a little bit healthier as time goes on. And look, the volume has definitely been there, right? 16 and 15 carries in his two most recent games. That's plenty. Against New Orleans, that is plenty. I can almost guarantee you, just with 15 and 16 carries, man, if he sees that against New Orleans, he's locking in 9 fantasy points right there. Lock that in. Now, if he can get into the end zone, we're cooking with gas. All right, so I really like Nick Chubb this week against the New Orleans Saints. I've got a deep sleeper here for you. Look, this is not a great week for sleeper running backs. A lot of the teams that we're picking on all year long, the Giants, the Carolina Panthers, they got bye weeks. All right, so running back is a little sparse, but this one I am interested in, and I know he is out there. If you are desperate, you need a guy. You need a running back. You've got bye weeks. You've got injuries. You've got, I don't know what. But Jamycal Hasty versus the Rams is such an interesting pick for me, man. And this is what I'm talking about. You know, when you come to the Sleeper King and I'm cooking up these guys, these are the kind of players that you come to me for. All right. Jamycal Hasty versus the Rams. Vegas has the Rams. I'm talking about like the boys in the desert, not the Raiders. The bookmakers, I should say, they've got the Rams as a 5-point road favorite. Now, given the matchup, I actually like the Rams not just to cover that, but to win by more than 7. I bring that up because we know that Ramondre Stevenson struggles in games where the Pats trail big. In the 3 games this year where the Patriots have lost by 7 or more points, Stevenson has averaged just 4.3 PPR points per game. Okay, that is when the team basically shifts to one of their pass-catching options. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, James, isn't that Antonio Gibson? Very quietly, Jamycal Hasty has taken over that backup pass-catching role. The last time the Patriots lost by 7 or more was in week number 7 against Jacksonville. They lost by 2 scores here. Hasty had his best fantasy day by far. 5 targets, 5 grabs, 49 yards, and a touchdown. That was good for 15.7 PPR points. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. Again, that stat line I gave you, that's just as a receiving option. Right, 5 targets, 5 grabs, 49 yards, and a touchdown. Just as a receiver, right? And again, he has outplayed in terms of total snaps. He has outplayed Antonio Gibson the last 4 weeks as well. Now, it very well could be a split, situation right there, and we could get banged. Right? That's why this is a deep sleeper for you. But we do know that LA's got a shaky pass coverage group as well. They allow a 90.24% completion rate to opposing running backs. 90.24% completion rate. If you throw to a running back, they're catching it. All right, that's the second worst mark in the NFL. Also the second worst mark in the NFL. They're giving up chunk plays to receivers out of the backfield. 7.95 yards per target on pass attempts to running backs. Again, second worst in the NFL. That's a chunk play. I mean, shoot, if he sees 5 targets in this game, to me, that's an easy 40 yards right there. Right, so now we're already talking about 5 catches for 40 yards. We're talking like a 9.0 spot. Again, for a deep sleeper, that's not bad. Obviously, the benchmark for me, whenever I consider it to be a success, is when they get to 10. 9 it's not good, but for a deep sleeper, that's not bad. Right, but the benchmark to me is a successful day is when they get to 10. I'm hoping that Jamycal Hasty gets to 10 against the LA Rams. The matchup is pretty good, like I said. And if the Rams end up, pushing this lead out to 7, like I think they will. Now, again, the boys in the desert, they disagree. They say a 5-point road favorite. 5 can easily turn into 8, boys. We know this. We know this very well. So, again, I like Jamycal Hasty as a deep sleeper here for the New England Patriots against the LA Rams. All right, let's talk about tight ends here. There's actually quite a few really interesting tight ends. I got about 5 of them. Again, tight end has been tough, right? Tight end's been a tough group to crack. I know there's a bunch of you out there streaming this position. So these guys are streamable. And a lot of these dudes are widely available as well. Dawson Knox against Kansas City. I really like this play, right? Dalton Kincaid has not practiced as of Thursday. Keon Coleman has been ruled out. Target share will be plentiful is what I was trying to say. Plentiful there. Now, I don't know how much of that ends up going to Dawson Knox, but the matchup is good. The Chiefs have allowed the most fantasy points per game to the tight end position. There's plenty of targets available. There's already a built-in chemistry between Dawson Knox and Josh Allen, and Kansas City has given up the most fantasy points per game to this position group. Man, a lot of that stuff lines up when we're talking about, I don't want to wait. Dawson's Creek, Knox. All right, let's go. Will Dissly versus Cincinnati. The Bengals have given up big-time production to the tight end group. They've allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game to that position. 5 different tight ends have scored 15-plus fantasy points against Cincinnati over the last 6 weeks. Again, 5 different tight ends. Now, to be fair, 2 of them came on the same team. Right? 2 of them came on the same team. There was 2 guys from Baltimore in one game that scored 15-plus fantasy points. Okay, but again, 5 different tight ends have scored 15-plus fantasy points against Cincinnati over the last 6 weeks. Will Dissly, for whatever reason, Will Dissly is getting that work, man. Again, we've talked about, you heard it in yesterday's episode when I was talking about quarterbacks. The Chargers have ramped up their passing overall, right? Again, 30 pass attempts per game for Justin Herbert over his last 5 weeks. But the volume for the passing attack for the Chargers has definitely ramped up. Okay. And Will Dissly, the results have been mixed, right? But he has seen a huge spike in first read looks. Now, again, the results have been very mixed, right? This is not a locked and loaded type of player here for Will Dissly, but he is averaging 6.75 targets per game over his last 4 games. I mean, shoot, nearly 7 targets per game at the tight end position. That is gold, baby. That's gold. Okay, if he sees that level of production, that level of volume again this week against Cincinnati, a team that's just been getting gashed by tight ends, I can almost assure you, I might give this the James Coe stamp of approval, the guarantee. If he sees 7 targets, he's finishing it as a top 12 fantasy tight end, period. Will Dissly, widely available right now against the Cincinnati Bengals. Jonnu Smith against Las Vegas, very interesting one right here. The Miami offense, it's not good. It's not good right now. But Jonnu's got a great matchup on deck against the Raiders, who have given up the 5th most fantasy points per game to this position group. Now, of particular interest to me, though, is the 82.8% completion rate allowed to tight ends. That's the 2nd worst mark in the NFL. Again, nearly 83% completion rate allowed to tight ends, right? Why does that matter? Especially for the Dolphins, why does that matter? Because the Dolphins continue to fire short and underneath pass attempts. They're trying to get this ball out quick, man. Quick. I'm assuming this is to protect Tua Tagovailoa from taking hits. I think that would make a lot of sense. On the season, Tua is averaging 2.44 time to throw. 2.44 seconds is what I'm trying to say here. So snap to throw, 2.44 seconds. If that sounds quick, it's because it is. That is the quickest time to throw stat in the NFL. Period. So they're getting this ball out quick. Again, short and underneath. In 2.44 seconds, you don't have a lot of time for these shot plays, man. You're not looking to Tyreek over the top. You're not looking for Jalen Waddle on this big over route. No. You can't do that in 2.44 seconds. Impossible. Right? So again, if Tua's looking for these quick hitters and the Raiders are giving up easy buckets to tight ends, again, peanut butter and jelly, hot sauce and fried chicken, baby, you would think that Jonnu Smith could absolutely benefit right here. This is especially true considering Jonnu is not just some rando tight end on a rando team right now. Jonnu's averaging a very healthy 6.2 targets per game over his last 5 games. So again, Jonnu Smith is seeing some decent volume. It's a good matchup against the Raiders. And shoot, the Miami Dolphins are just trying to get the ball out fast. I think Jonnu could absolutely benefit here. Deep sleeper alert for you. How about Brock Wright against Jacksonville? Now, as of Thursday, Sam Laporta with his shoulder issue has not practiced all week long. So that does put Brock Wright in line to potentially start. Obviously, this one goes out the window if Sam Laporta starts. If Sam Laporta plays even 50% of the snaps, we're throwing this one out. Okay. But we do know that the Jags pass defense is super sus, as the kids like to say. They're bottom 10 in yards. Do kids still say sus? I'm not sure. I'm not a kid. I'm old. But I've got kids. I've got a kid who says sus, so maybe they do still say sus. Anyways, the Jags pass defense sus. They're bottom 10, the Jags are, in yards, completion percentage, and yards per target allowed to tight end. So they give up chunk plays, right? They give up a high completion percentage, and they do give up a lot of yards, do the Jags, to tight ends. And Detroit, even though they have de-emphasized the tight end position this year, as any Sam Laporta fantasy manager knows, again, the matchup is good. And if Sam Laporta is out of there, we would imagine Brock Wright can see a huge chunk of the plays as well. All right. So again, deep sleeper is Brock Wright. All right, this is the last one here. Pat Freiermuth against Baltimore. We know that Baltimore has really struggled in the pass game. Their pass defense has really struggled this year. How they went from literally the best defense in the NFL. There was a time where the Baltimore Ravens defense last year was like on a historical pace. Like that's how good they were doing. They go from the penthouse to the outhouse in a hurry. I mean, shoot. 2 years ago, it was Philadelphia going from most feared pass defense to the softest pass defense in the NFL to now we go from Baltimore taking that same track and going penthouse to outhouse. It's one of, if not the worst pass defense in the NFL. A big part of that is that, man, they're just getting absolutely hammered by tight ends. We just saw Tanner Hudson score a touchdown en route to a 16-point fantasy day last week. But he was the 4th tight end in the last 5 weeks to score double-digit PPR points against Baltimore. These guys have been gashed all over the place. And again, even the lowly Tanner Hudson was able to put together a 16-point fantasy day. Pat Freiermuth isn't highly utilized in this offense, but I will say this, he's been on a little bit of a touchdown streak. After not scoring a touchdown for an entire calendar year, okay, Freiermuth has now scored 3 times in his last 6 games. So they've been looking for him a little bit in the end zone. By the way, I think, with the addition of Mike Williams, they can get down there into the red zone a little bit easier and a little bit more often. Baltimore's pass defense in general is real bad. So we're hoping that the Steelers will be in the red zone and threatening, maybe goal to go a few times, and maybe one of those times Pat Freiermuth can punch one into the end zone. That would be great. That would be ideal. But again, these last two are more like deep sleeper-ish type players. Pat Freiermuth, 100% touchdown dependent, 100% guys. But I do think with the matchup and just with his recent history of touchdowns, 3 in his last 6 games, he might get in there. He might get in there. Anytime touchdown? Anytime touchdown for Pat Freiermuth? Long shot bet? What do you guys say? All right, there you go. So that's your show. I tell you what, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll be talking about fantasy wide receivers tomorrow. All right, so we'll get that going. But until then, remember, it's never too late to chase your dreams. Peace.